Hello YouTube, my name is Nar. You join me today not in the Fingerstyle Guitar studio in Sheffield, but instead in my house. I've got a new YouTube corner. It's very nice. I'll be using it for the Folky Fridays live streams from now on, as the internet connection here is rather better. If you haven't joined in the Folky Fridays live stream before, it's every Friday from 5:30 PM UK time. Every week I live stream a Irish or Celtic guitar tutorial, and you can join in, ask me any questions you have in real time and all that good stuff. So if you want to check that out, subscribe to the channel and you will get a notification about upcoming events. Anyway, in today's video I'm going to be running a competition to celebrate the launch of my brand new book, Irish Tunes for Fingerstyle Guitar, in which I've arranged 10 of my favourite Irish melodies in sort of subtly jazzy fingerstyle arrangements. And you can buy that at the moment on Amazon and through my website, fingerstyleguitar.co.uk, linked in a card in the corner of the screen. What I'm going to be doing in today's video is showing you how you can write your own fingerstyle arrangements of your favourite tunes, and I'm going to have a little competition to see who can write the best one. So once you've finished watching this video, go away and write an arrangement, make a video of it and post it on YouTube, and then comment down below on this video with a link to your video. Our lucky winner will receive a copy of my brand new book, Irish Tunes for Fingerstyle Guitar, a copy of my first book, Backing Guitar Techniques for Traditional Celtic Music, which was out a few years ago, a Folk Friend Guitar Practice Diary, which is my latest practice aid to help you make your practice time more efficient, and also an amazing mode wheel from Fingerstyle Guitar, which shows you all the notes which go in any of the folk modes, all the chords that fit with that mode, and also how the modes relate to one another. So that's a really useful way to visualise and memorise which chords you're going to need for backing Celtic music. You will also, as well as that, win three, that's really hard to say. As well as that, you'll also receive 3 free guitar lessons with myself via your choice of Zoom, Skype or WhatsApp, or even in person if you happen to live near Sheffield and you can get down to my shop on Cherry Street. So without further ado, let's make a start on arranging some tunes. So the first thing you're going to need to do to write a fingerstyle arrangement is to pick a tune and work out what mode it's in. Now I'm going to be running through Cooley's reel in this tutorial, which is one of the ones which is arranged in my book. And that tune is, either you can see it as being in E Dorian or E Aeolian, because there is no 6th note in it, and that's the only difference between those two modes. So I'm going to treat it as if it's in E Aeolian for now, because that's the darker minor, and I would like it to be a sort of dark, miserable version of the tune rather than the more optimistic Dorian. So what you want to do to begin with is find a convenient place where you can play the scale for whichever mode you're in for your tune. With E Aeolian being my starting point, that's quite a convenient one because I've got E strings at the top and bottom of my guitar, and I can easily make the main 3 chords root notes by just playing the bottom string for chord 1, that's E, E, F sharp, G, A, so chord 4 is going to be A, and that's there, A minor it would be for the chord, and B is just there on the 2nd fret. So that's my 3 main root notes that I'm going to need quite conveniently at the bottom end of the pitch range of the guitar, so that's perfect. Then I can work out how to play the scale shape down here. So E Aeolian is an easy one at the bottom. You've got lots of open strings in it as well, and that is good. What you really want is to have as many open strings as possible so that you don't have to be holding down complicated chord shapes all the time, because obviously at speed and when you're concentrating on the finger picking as well, that's going to be quite difficult. So here's how you would play E Aeolian down the bottom here. Simple. If you aren't familiar with the mode shapes, by the way, they are all in the Folk Friend Guitar Practice Diary, and you can find one of those in the corner of the screen. They're available now through Amazon. They're also available on my blog, which is linked in the description down below, and that'll teach you a little bit more about how they work. And I've also made a series of music theory videos that cover them as well. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, check them out. They are also linked in a card in the corner of the screen. The next thing to do once you've got that is to work out what chords are available to you in your chosen mode. And in this case, E Aeolian, so I've got E minor as my main one. Chord 4 is going to be A minor, and chord 5 is going to be B minor. They're my three main ones. Now, for fingerstyle purposes, generally speaking, you tend to try and avoid bar chords because, as I've said before, it's quite hard to fret more complicated chord shapes when you're in a hurry and concentrating on something else at the same time. So E minor's there, that's easy, plenty of open strings. You want to focus on using chord shapes where you've got spare fingers to add notes from the melody as well. So for the E minor chord, I might do it like that, or I might choose to do it like that. Or I might instead use E minor 7 because that only requires one finger and it sounds a bit jazzier and more interesting, and it's actually easier to play, and that leaves me with all these spare fingers here that could be fretting tune notes. So that is good. For the A minor chord, the next main chord, chord 4, that is an A minor chord, and that leaves me one spare finger for fretting tune notes. Better than that would be A minor 7, which is again jazzier and leaves me an extra spare finger, so that would be a nice one. As well as that, you could actually use A minor 9, which has even fewer fingers, that's just one finger. So even better, you can use all these spare ones and swap around which finger you do that with, depending on what notes you need for the melody at the time. For my chord 5, B minor would be a bar chord like this. Very difficult. Much easier, I'm going to use a lazy version of B minor 7, which only uses 2 chords, and I'm probably going to use that instead of B minor at any point where I need a B minor chord in the tune, because again that leaves me lots of spare fingers. I suggest that before you start, you write down a complete list of the 7 chords that are available to you, which you can find by using your mode wheel or just by working them out. Again, if you don't know how to do that, see my music theory videos, they explain all that stuff. And then for each one, maybe think about a few different options and consider which will be the easiest to play. Because there will be some times where you might need a tune note that's further up the neck, so perhaps you'll have to switch to a bar chord or something like that. So it's good to have a few options lined up in your head or ready to go before you start. The next thing that you want to do is to work out, using the mode shape that you found at the start, how to play the melody that you're going for just as single notes. So for Cooley's, I can do it using my E Aeolian shape. So out of those notes, I'm going to go. Etc, etc. And once you've got that down there, then you want to start trying to combine that with chord shapes. So my first chord is obviously going to be E minor for this tune, and the notes that are going to go with that bit is going to be something like so you can see what I've done there is I've just kept an E minor shape held down. I've used occasionally my little finger to add a tune note, and I've moved my third finger back and forth from where it was to the adjacent string in order to fret some tune notes. So something like that. That is my first little section where it's all chord 1, and after that I want to be moving to a D chord. Before we look at that though, let's just consider how we're going to fill out the space, because you need root notes to accompany the melody, and then you also want some sort of regular figure at the lower end of your frequency spectrum to kind of fill out the space. So you always want the tune at the top, you want your root notes down the bottom, and in the middle you want some kind of regular rhythmic thing which gives your fingers something to do and just fills out the arrangement so that it's a fingerstyle arrangement and not just a melody with some root notes under it. So there are lots and lots of approaches to this, but for this one, because it's a reel, I'm going to do a very common technique, which is where you use the root note and then the fifth, and I'm going to play those on the first for the root note and third beat for the fifth of every bar. So that's going to be something like... that just fills out the space a little bit. As well as that, I don't like having quavers which don't have anything in them, personally. I try and avoid it. Sometimes I do. So what I'm going to do is, where we've got a space here, so there's a long note and there's a bit of a gap before the next note. So I'm just going to put in, with my index finger, I'm just going to put in an extra E note to fill in the space. And that's going to be the higher pitched E, which is held down by my third finger. So, and here there's another long note with nothing in the preceding quaver, so I'll fill that in. Something like that. So that makes a nice full sounding first bar. And what I'm going to do then is try and extrapolate the picking pattern which is evolved within that first bar, and more or less try and maintain that picking pattern the same throughout the whole arrangement, because you want to try and keep what your right hand is doing fairly simple so that your brain can be concentrating on keeping the tune and the chords going on the left hand. So the next bar is going to go like that, and that needs to have a D chord under it. So this is tricky because I've got an F sharp as my tune note, and the most convenient place within my shape to play the F sharp is on the D string, but I need a D under it. Now I can't have the open string and the F sharp at the same time because they're on the same string, unless I can time travel, which sadly I can't. So what I'm going to do instead is put my little finger on the D note on the 5th fret of the A string, and then I'm going to go like this and do a nice little rundown to the D there. If I'm going to continue this thing that we were doing before of having the root note and then the 5th on the third beat of the bar, the next note that I'm going to want in the bass is going to be the A. So that's going to be the A string, and that's going to go with the next couple of tune notes. And then a D again. Something like that. So we've got... Again there, I've got two options. Either I could put my little finger back on to get that D note, or I could go up to the open D string because that's now been vacated by the finger that was holding down the F sharp before. In situations like this, you might find one is easier than the other. Obviously always plump for the easier option, because you want to keep things as simple as you can while still sounding good. So I'm going to go with putting my little finger back on, I think, because personally I find if I've just taken it off, then it's easier to put it back on again and keep my right hand in the same position as it was when I started. Just a quick note on the right hand, by the way. I always do the right hand in the same way, whatever genre I'm playing. This includes like solo jazz, bossa nova, all the other stuff as well. I always assign my thumb to the bottom 2 strings and one finger each to the top 4. I find that that's the best way to strum most things. Sometimes your little finger is not as fast necessarily as the other fingers, so occasionally if you've got a really fast section on maybe one of the upper 2 strings, you might want to switch your fingers so that you've got the top 3 on the G, B and E strings. But generally I find having one finger each for the top 4, so index on D, middle finger on G, ring finger on B and little finger on E, I find that to be the easiest way, and then the bottom 2 strings, do both of them with your thumb because they're generally going to be playing the root notes. So that gives us I've got to nearly to the end of the first round of the A part, so I'm going to want my chord 5 coming back to chord 1. So that is where my B minor should be. Now I could do it like this and get the tune notes out of a bar chord, something like that. However, you can see from my scrunched up face that it's quite hard to play that. You're going to end up with a lot of buzzy notes trying to do that at speed. You could play about with that for a bit and find an easier way of playing it. The one I eventually hit upon was like that, which is the same thing, but I'm just starting on a B power chord instead. Something like that. Easier to play. Just a quick note, sometimes you'll find a tune note which is too high to be within the shape that you picked at the start. What you'll have to do then is move into the territory of using bar chords. And a really useful thing that you can practice is getting used to using bar chord shapes and finding their scales around them and getting used to playing them over the bar chord shape with your spare fingers. So for example, if I play an E minor bar chord like this, I mean that is using all of my fingers, so I've got no scope for playing tune notes. However, if I switch to E minor 7, which is always a valid substitute for E minor, I get a nicer, richer, jazzier chord, but now I've also got my useful little finger with which I can play all the notes of an E minor scale. So if I go from the E under my index finger on the 7th fret, so we've got E, F sharp by moving that 3rd finger, G, A, B, C, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B. So that's a really useful thing to practice, not just for the exercise of writing fingerstyle arrangements, but also for all sorts of other stuff. It's especially handy if you're into jazz soloing and anything to do with trying to find a melody and play the chords at the same time. Always bear in mind when you're trying to find a bar chord which you can play tune notes over, that the open strings are your best friend. Always be thinking about, if you're trying to find a chord with some tune notes over it, be thinking, does this have an open string that I could use to free up a finger for fretting some tune notes? So I'll just run through a few more bars of my Cooley's arrangement so you can see what I did next. So we had for this section here, I didn't want to just go root, 5th, root, 5th. So for a little bit of variation, I added in the major 3rd of the D chord right down the bottom there. So effectively D in the first inversion if you're sort of au fait with like classical terminology. So my bass line for that little section goes root, 5th, 3rd, 5th, root, 5th, 3rd, 5th. That's always a thing you can do. You can make your bass line, it doesn't have to be just the root and the 5th, you can make it outline any other notes from the chord that you want as well. So if you've got a D chord as your underlying chord, a D chord is D, F sharp and A, so I've gone D, A, F sharp, A, D, A, F sharp, A, like that in the bass. And then on to my B minor chord. That's B minor's 5th, F sharp down the bottom. This is a repeat of the early bit. Now here we get to a point where there is a note which is too high to be played using my convenient shape, so I have to use a bar chord. And the bar chord I've plumped for, because it's going from chord 5 back to chord 1, so I need a B minor chord. So I've used this one, B minor 7, and that frees up my little finger to play the tune notes. Here, the next tune note would be the high G there. And I can't really do that within the bar chord. I mean, I could by flattening that finger, but at speed that's very hard. So instead of that, what I've done is I've gone from, there's my B minor 7 for the first 2 quavers of the little section. Then I've gone like this. So if you look at that shape, what I've done is I've taken my B minor bar chord, I've maintained 3 fingers from it, but then I've just swapped which finger does it so that that one can flatten to the top string to get the tune note there. So, and then to get the next tune note, which is the top E string, I just take that finger off. So, and then here I've stuck a little A in the root note just to follow the melody. Then I've gone down to my B minor 7 shape because I need the D string for the chords, so I can't use the bar chord shape anymore. So you can hear there my little bass line for that bit went root 5th, root 7th. The 7th is okay because it's a B minor 7 chord that I'm playing under that, so that's in the chord. So we got root 5th, root 7th, root low 5th, and that leads nicely back down to the E, which is the ending note for the tune. So you basically need to work through the rest of the tune in this way, putting in the relevant chords and root notes under the tune, and making sure that your tune notes are always at the highest pitches within whatever you're playing. Try and keep the pattern of what you're picking roughly the same throughout, because that is going to make your life much easier, because then you can let your right hand just do the same thing again and again, and your brain focuses on the complicated stuff that your left hand is doing, or vice versa if you're left-handed, of course. So that's about it for this video. I hope those little pointers have started you off on the right foot to write some interesting fingerstyle arrangements of your own. I'd love to see your arrangements. I'm really looking forward to seeing the competition entries. If you would like to enter, upload your video to YouTube and stick a comment in the box down below with a little link and your name and where you are. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the little thumbs up button as well. The YouTube algorithm likes it, and I am a slave to my robotic master, so if we please the YouTube algorithm, then maybe eventually they will give me some money for making these videos. You never know. Thank you very much for watching. I will see you all next week for another tutorial. Hit the subscribe button if you'd like to get that straight to your inbox, and also check out my website linked in the box down below for all my great competition prizes today, my latest book, my old book, the Folk Friend Practice Diary, and the amazing mode wheel from Fingerstyle Guitar. Nice one. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.